Greetings, Guardians. This is Olympus Alliance. And today, we're stepping back into one of the most rewarding, and at the same time, one of the most frustrating parts of the game. The arena? Because let's be honest, what everyone really loves about arena is not the fights. It's the rewards. That moment when the day resets, and you collect your emeralds after a successful climb. That's what we're all chasing. And if you approach arena correctly, if you understand how to climb at the right moments, and more importantly, how to win the fights that matter, you can secure thousands of emeralds every single season. Not just once, but consistently. For 2, sometimes even 3 weeks in a row. And that adds up fast. Especially when those big events come around. When every emerald suddenly becomes valuable. But here's the problem. Climbing arena today is not what it used to be. With relics, with talismans, with power spikes that are not always visible. You can no longer rely on guessing. And you can't always test every fight. So what happens? You hesitate. You skip fights. Or worse, you attack blindly. And lose. And that's exactly why today's video matters. Because instead of guessing, we're going to give you structure. We're going to give you counters. Real ones. For the most common arena defenses you are facing right now. Now before we begin, one important thing. These counters assume you are relatively close in power. If your opponent is significantly stronger, or has key relics that you don't, even the best counter can fail. So don't bite off more than you can chew. Pick your fights smart. And use these as tools, not guarantees. Now, let's get into it. The first defense you're going to see everywhere. Julius, Kayla, Aidan, Hoos, and a control hero. Usually Tempus, Somna, or Lian. And there's a reason this line is still everywhere. Because it works. It has sustain, it has damage, and it has control. But the good news is, the counter is much more straightforward than it used to be. What you need here is a core built around Mushy, Burner, and Somna. That's your foundation. From there, you adapt. Tempus works very well. Zesha can bring extra pressure. Aidan can stabilize. Even Alvana can find value depending on the matchup. What matters here is control. You don't try to outdamage this team. You control it. You disrupt it. And you break it slowly. Now we move to a variation of that same core. But more dangerous. Julius, Kayla, Aidan, and now Polaris, and Fólio. This is where things get tricky. Because now you're dealing with mixed damage. Physical. And magic. And both Kayla and Fólio are already extremely strong on their own. Together, they create constant pressure. Now here, you have 2 paths. If your iris is strong enough, you can go aggressive. Luther, Electra, Iris, Soleil, Kayla. This can work very well. But only if your iris can carry the fight. If she can't, you need to mirror the threat. Fólio? Against Fólio. And this is where the counter becomes very consistent. Julius, Fólio, Polaris, Somna, and your 5th slot. That's your flexibility. Judge works well. Zesha can increase pressure. And this is one of those fights where training helps a lot. Because small adjustments make a big difference. Now, we enter one of the most dangerous arena cores right now. Yasmin. Burner. Octavia. This line is explosive, fast, aggressive, and extremely punishing if you misplay. And one detail you must always check. Yasmine's relic. Because that alone can decide the fight. The supporting heroes can vary. Dante. Hus. Somna. Soleil. But the counter remains stable. Electra. Astaroth. Satori. Burner. And then your 5th slot. Soleil. Tempus. Even me if you have her. But here's the key. This is not a fight you rush. If your Electra is not strong enough, or if the power gap is too big, Yasmin will delete you before you even react. So respect the matchup. Now we move to a newer threat. Drayne. Usually combined with Burner. Soleil, Dante, and Octavia. And this is a dangerous setup. Because Drayne's weakness is magic. But Dante and Octavia protect him from exactly that. So he gets to do what he does best. Execute your team. One by one. But like every defense, there is a weakness. And here, we exploit two things. Magic damage. And energy gain. So the core of the counter becomes Electra. Satori. Burner. Somna. And Cascade. Electra. Burner. Somna. They control the fight. They slow everything down. They protect your team. And then, Satori and Cascade do the work. They break terrain. They remove the threat. And if you don't have that exact setup, you can adapt. Fólio and Polaris can replace Somna and Cascade. Different approach. Same idea. Finally, one of the most confusing defenses for many players. Satori and Iris. Together. Usually with Electra. Soleil. And Tempus. And this is difficult. Because the natural counter to Iris is Octavia. But Octavia struggles against Satori. So what do? You balance. You don't ignore one threat. You manage both. You start with Octavia. And Dante? Because you need the dodge engine. Then you bring Aidan. His shield. And his magic defense artifact. Reduce the impact of both Iris and Satori. Then you add Hus. Because his healing. And his artifact. Help stabilize everything. And now, you need to finish the fight. Your best option. Iris. Because she naturally counters Satori. And benefits from the debuffs already in play. If your Iris is not strong enough, Cornelius is your alternative. Sniping key targets. And adding even more magic protection. So Guardians. This is the difference. Arena is not about power alone. It's about understanding. Recognizing patterns. Knowing what you're facing. And responding correctly. Because when you do that, Arena stops being frustrating. And starts becoming a resource. A consistent source of emeralds. That fuels everything else you do. So set yourself a goal. Climb early in the season. Secure your position. And maintain it. Because with the right approach, 20,000 emeralds per season is not unrealistic. It's achievable. Now I want to hear from you. What counters are working for you? What lines are giving you trouble? Let's build this together. Stay tuned, stay sharp, and as always, salute and friendship.